Welcome to the Statistics in ED YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about why I don't use PowerPoint to present data analyses. And there are three main points I want to talk about. So the first one can be summed up as automation and reproducibility. The second one is about file formats, and then a short last one about file sizes. Before we dive into any details, let me point out that I don't think PowerPoint is a bad tool. I think it's a great tool. It's well suited for presentations. It's very easy to use. It's full of useful features. It's here to stay, and I'm fine with that. So this is not a rant about PowerPoint. But still I want to give a few reasons why I prefer other tools at the moment. Right, so the first point is about automation and reproducibility. So I will contrast the approach that I favor, which is fully automated process, to a process where you have your data analysis tool on the one hand and then your PowerPoint presentation on the other hand, and you do your data analysis, create plots and tables and summary statistics, whatever, and you copy that over to the PowerPoint presentation and manually type in your key findings and so on. And I want to contrast this to a process where there's just one document that powers your data analysis and that also creates the presentation automatically. And this document is a code document. In my case, it would be R code. This code generates plots and tables and even text modules. And it also generates the presentation in a fully automated way. So you don't need to copy and paste anything. Obviously, this workflow reduces errors, it reduces workload, and there's only one place to keep everything up to date. You don't have to keep the presentation and your analysis in sync because you only keep your code document up to date, and then you generate or recreate the presentation by just pressing a button. So we can call this approach creating slides programmatically. And that means that changes in the data analysis process automatically transfer to the presentation. And there can be different types of changes. For example, the data can change. You may have intermediate reports while your data collection process still goes on. And then you need to update your report as you get more data. So it's great to just get a different data file, update your data, and then just press a button to recreate the presentation, and all the charts and numbers update automatically. There may be also other changes in the data analysis procedures. For example, you may modify your models or metrics or even styles. So a worst case scenario, for example, would be, let's say you have a presentation with 100 charts, and then one of your stakeholders just asks you to change some styling aspect, for example, themes or fonts or color scales or even plot captions, whatever. And in a worst case scenario, you would have to recreate 100 charts and then manually reinsert them to your PowerPoint slides. So using a programmatic approach means you just employ this change in your code, press a button, and you get an update of the presentation automatically. I do that using Markdown, R Markdown, but there are other tools that can do that as well. Now, to be honest, this doesn't speak against PowerPoint in general. It just speaks against a manual process of building up PowerPoint presentations, because in R Markdown, for example, it is possible to specify PowerPoint as an output format, and you can automate creating PowerPoint presentations fully. You can even specify a default template so that you get slides in a specific style and you don't need to apply styling afterwards. Right, so this is not the only reason why I don't prefer PowerPoint. Another reason is linked to file formats. So let's see what HTML-based approaches can do. This, for example, is possible in PowerPoint. This is a GIF file, the animation. You can embed that in PowerPoint. It won't show in editing mode, but it will show in presentation mode. So it's possible to include animations like this in PowerPoint. This is an animation of the famous Gapminder data. If you haven't seen Hans Rosling's videos on YouTube, it's really worthwhile watching them. Okay, but let's move on and look at a different way of animating this data set. So this is something that you can't do in PowerPoint, at least not in native PowerPoint. I think it is possible using add-ins, but we'll talk about that more in a moment because add-ins come with downsides. So here, for example, I get mouse over effect, so I can point at specific data points and it gives me additional information. Like in this case, it's just the country, but I could easily add more information, for example, the exact coordinates of each point, or even values of other variables that are not directly shown on the graph could be included here on these mouse over effects. I can start the animation by pressing this play button, and you see that there's a slider at the bottom, and I can use this slider to really interact with the chart and go to any point in time that I like. For example, I can check out the year 1992, and there's one country that really drops off in life expectancy on the y-axis, and mouse over shows me it's Rwanda, tragic events there with the genocide. So here I get more chances to interact with the animation. I can also zoom in, for example, if I just want to see the countries with a life expectancy of no more than 50 years, I can zoom in and then replay the animation to see this part of the data in more detail. And I can reset the axis anytime. So this is powered by JavaScript. It works natively in any web browser. It's an HTML format, and it only takes a few lines of R code to create this. So you don't need to be able to write JavaScript code, but you can use R packages that do that in the background and have some top-level R code to create an animation like this. And of course, it's possible in other programming languages like Python as well. Right, this is another example of something that is not directly possible in PowerPoint as far as I know. We see a data set here. You see here in total at the bottom we have 1,704 rows of data, and I just use one screen, one slide to show this data. I have pagination, so I can work my way through the data, but I can also sort and filter. For example, if I want to see which countries have the lowest life expectancy, I can just sort by life expectancy, and Rwanda pops up again, and then we see Afghanistan, Gambia, and so on with the lowest life expectancy in the data set. And I can also sort in descending order to find out which countries have the highest life expectancy, and we find Japan, Hong Kong, Iceland, Switzerland, and so on. I can filter by countries. For example, if I'm just interested in Germany, I can filter for Germany, and now since there are only 12 time points in this data set, I now get 12 rows, so I can quickly access the subset of data that I'm interested in and obtain information. So this can be up to the user. Yeah, it's nice to be able to interact with these tables. Right, so to sum up, the interactive options that we saw are powered by JavaScript, which is supported natively by web browsers, so no additional software necessary to play a presentation with these options. Whereas in PowerPoint it's not supported natively. It is possible with add-ins as far as I know, but the downside is, of course, if you save your presentation and you want to run it on a different machine, it won't work the same way if you don't have the add-ins installed on that different machine. So you do get some interactivity in PowerPoint, but not with as many options as we just saw in the HTML-based formats. Right, to finish off, just a few words about file sizes. I've seen some examples of very large PowerPoint presentations, and then depending on your hardware, you may have a noticeable delay when opening the file before you can show the presentation. It is possible to use external files, I think, but it's not the default. Whereas in this HTML-based format that I'm using here, it's a xaringan presentation powered by an R package, xaringan. The default is to use subfolders. So the presentation file as such, the top-level presentation that I start up, is less than 10 kilobytes, as you see here. And then the animations and the plots are included from subfolders just as needed, so I can start and navigate very quickly through the presentation. By the way, this number, 9.6 kilobytes, is created by an R expression, so when I update this presentation and work more on it and add slides, for example, then this number would update automatically from the R code, and I don't have to keep in mind to manually change this number. Right, that was about it. I'm really keen to hear your views, like what are your favorite tools? Are you happy using PowerPoint? Which tools do you use? Do you use HTML-based tools, or do you have other ideas? I'm also happy to provide workshops or webinars on HTML-based reporting in R, so if you're interested in that, let me know. Otherwise, all the best for your data analysis, for your presentations. See you next time. Yeah, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, that really helps. All the best, see you soon, ciao.